Greetings, fellow denizens of the internet. This is Space Zoomer once again, zooming through space, talking about stuff nobody cares about, except for me. You know why? Because I'm the Space Zoomer, darn it. And this is the first edition of a series that I'm calling Games That I Like. Here we go! Prince of Persia was one of the greatest games of its time. It was one of the pioneers in using rotoscoping for video game graphics. Its unique visual style, crazy smooth animation, and challenging inventive gameplay inspired countless other games like Another World, and its legacy still shows itself in the Sands of Time series. I will not be talking about that game today. No, instead, a special mention goes out to one of its contemporaries and one of my all-time favorites. Oddworld Abe's Odyssey was created and developed by Lauren Lanning and his team at Oddworld Inhabitants. Taking a few nods from the original Prince of Persia, Oddworld Abe's Odyssey was what we gamers call a cinematic platformer. Or to make things more complicated than all that, imagine if Super Mario Bros. And Monkey Island somehow conceived a child. And it looked like this. Or this. Or even this.
It's time to confess.
Abe's Odyssey is truly a milestone in gaming creativity. In a time when most video games were pushing the envelope by making the transition to 3D, some more successful than others, Oddworld Abe's Odyssey came along and surprised everyone, proving once and for all that sometimes substance can be much more important than style. I won't be talking about that game either! No, instead, an extra special mention should go out to the last game that the inhabitants of Oddworld ever produced, one of the greatest and most underrated games of all time, Oddworld Stranger's Wrath. Giddy up. Alright, let's start off with the obvious. Oddworld Stranger's Wrath is my favorite video game of all time, bar none. And for the sake of being biased, I stand by my belief that this game is more underrated than Psychonauts, Beyond Good and Evil, and Okami combined. Yes, I said it. And I'll say it as many times as I want. You know how a lot of gamers sing so many praises about how great Psychonauts is, or how much they love Beyond Good and Evil, or how purty Okami looks? Shut up! I will say this with all the subtlety of shoving a loaf of bread down an old woman's throat. There is not, nor ought there be nothing, so exalted on the face of God's great earth than the greatest game ever made,
Oddworld Stranger's Wrath.
Yeah, but Jack, what's so great about Oddworld Stranger's Wrath anyway? It looks just like another first-person shooter to me.
Well, Mr. A number one blue ribbon choice prime cut state-of-the-art high-tech Olympic class retard, I'll show you. But first... Anyway, for your information, Oddworld Stranger's Wrath is definitely not just another first-person shooter. No. A first-person shooter looks like this. Or this. Or this. And don't correct me because I'm not wrong. I don't remember your average first-person shooter protagonist looking like this.
Never liked guns.
Actually, I remember him looking more like this. Or this. Or this. Or even this. Yeah, just draw a beard on him, give him a bandana, maybe feed him a few hundred cigars, and voila! He should be virtually indistinguishable from the average first-person shooter protagonist. Another thing that makes Oddworld Stranger's Wrath so special and unique is that you're not just shooting people. You're shooting people with people! That's right. The ammunition you fire from your weapon is actually alive! Live ammo! Get it? It's like you're mowing down everyone with Pokemon!
It's time to kick ass and chew bubble gum. And I'm all out of gum.
And another thing, you know how most FPS games have your player character only in the first-person perspective, even in the cutscenes if and when there are any? Not so of Oddworld Stranger's Wrath. Not only do you actually see what your player character looks like, but he has a voice, a name, and, get this, a personality! Plus, while you're playing the game, you can switch between first and third-person perspectives with ease, making it not only a first-person shooter, but also a third-person action game. When was the last time that happened? But who remembers that game? Another interesting innovation that Oddworld inhabitants created and utilized not only in Stranger's Wrath, but in the rest of their games as well, was GameSpeak. That is, when you press a button on your controller, you can address one of the friendly locals and ask for information. So you don't have to go through the whole Pied Piper shtick every time you want a chicken to follow you. And speaking of chickens, all the species of Oddworld are unique in their own right. For example, Stranger, and yes, that is his real name, is some kind of amalgam of all sorts of different creatures rolled into one. Is he a lion? Is he a gorilla? Is he a horse? Is he a ram? Is he Popeye? I don't know. Do you know, Frank?
I don't know.
Well, those are the breaks.
But anyway, all the townsfolk you encounter, too. They all look like giant humanoid chickens. You wear a disguise to look like human guys, but you're not a man, you're a chicken, boo. But enough about all the visual and interactive elements, because you know what they say. You can put lipstick on a pig, but it's still a pig. And as such, you can have a game that looks great and feels great, but when you get down to it, what's the point of taking out outlaws with your critter cannon? Besides to look awesome, of course. This is where the story of Oddworld Stranger's Wrath comes into fruition. In a nutshell, you play Stranger, a high plains drifting, crossbow slinging bounty killer wandering throughout Oddworld, which actually looks more like the American Old West, in search of bounties to kill and money to spend. You get more money, moolah, from the bounties you capture alive rather than dead. This was a little hard for me during my first playthrough because I kept killing every boss I came across. And speaking of bosses, they are brain-drillingly hard! And I'm actually ashamed to say this, but eventually I got so frustrated with how hard it was that I I used God mode, and I breezed through this game in an instant.
Chump cash-in time.
That was 8 years ago, and it's only until now that I'm starting to feel bad about it. I'm such a... But even so, I got to experience one of the best games of our time and of all time. But there is one more thing about this awesome game that I would like to discuss, and that is the ending. And no, I am totally not going to tell you what happens. The only thing I will say is that it nearly brought me to tears. Seriously, if you gave me a choice between the ending of Oddworld Stranger's Wrath and the ending of Toy Story 3, in terms of which ending had the most emotional impact out of me, I'd probably go with Toy Story 3. But Oddworld Stranger's Wrath still comes pretty darn close. Oddworld Stranger's Wrath was released in 2005 on the Xbox, and despite getting rave reviews from just about every video game critic that I know of, the inhabitants of Oddworld didn't make a penny from it. Because in the words of Lorne Lanning himself, it wasn't promoted. In other words, we saw nothing and no one telling us to buy the game, apart from advertising spreads in gaming magazines, which no one reads because gamers can only read the internet and nothing else. But luckily, Oddworld Stranger's Wrath has been re-released on Windows through Steam, and in super slick high definition on the PlayStation 3 and the PlayStation Vita. So now you too can have some oddities in your gaming repertoire, as I once did all those years ago.
Oh, this sucks.
Hey, nice going, stranger. I'll go get your moolah over at the bounty store, eh?
And that is my final word on my favorite video game of all time. This is Space Humor, crossing his fingers for the brutal ballad of Fangus Clot. Adios. Abe's Odyssey is truly a milestone in gaming creativity. In a time when most video games were pushing the graphical envelope by making the transition to 3D some more